This presentation was created in partnership with Prevention First, the Ohio Coaching and Mentoring Network, and the Ohio Mental Health and Addiction Services. Throughout this training, there will be knowledge checks. These multiple-choice questions will assess your learning. In order to successfully complete the course, you must get 10 out of 12 questions correct. If you do not answer 10 questions correctly throughout the module, at the end of the module, you'll be given a second opportunity to answer the questions you guessed incorrectly the first time. This course is an introduction to alcohol consumption and prevention. During this 1-hour course, you will learn what alcohol is, the history of alcohol consumption, the history of alcohol legislation and regulation, and the history of alcohol prevention. We will also cover alcohol use in the 21st century, alcohol in mainstream media, alcohol serving sizes, alcohol and the body. We will provide information on how alcohol interacts with other drugs and the difference between alcohol use, misuse, and dependence. Lastly, we will share current research on alcohol. Today's training has 6 goals. These goals are to summarize the history of alcohol, the prohibition of alcohol, and alcohol prevention strategies. Explain who uses alcohol and why. Identify the culture around alcohol use and common marketing strategies used in alcohol advertisements. Explain different serving sizes of alcoholic drinks and the effect of alcohol on the body. Explain the difference between use, misuse, and dependence. And describe the health benefits of moderate alcohol use. So, what is alcohol? Alcohol is classified as a depressant. A depressant is a substance that slows the functioning of the brain and body. Barbiturates, tranquilizers, anti-anxiety medications, antidepressants, and GHB are also depressants. There are many slang terms for alcohol. It is often referred to as booze, hooch, spirits, or liquid courage. You also may have heard it called sauce, firewater, or giggle juice. The first use of alcohol can be traced back as early as 7000 BC. Alcohol residue from fermented grain, fruit juice, and honey has been found in pottery jars from China. Throughout history, alcohol was commonly used for nutrition and as medicine. It has also played important roles in religious ceremonies and celebrations. Let's go back to Mesopotamia, between the years 3000 to 2000 BC. In this region, clay tablets with over 20 different beer recipes have been unearthed. These ancient recipe cards tell us the Sumerians of this time made beer. The Sumerians mostly used alcohol in sacrificial or religious ceremonies as an offering to the gods. Next, let's go to Egypt. In ancient Egypt, bread and beer were part of a typical daily diet. Most Egyptians drank beer for its believed nutritional and medicinal benefits. It was also used as compensation for labor and as part of celebrations. We continue to ancient Greece. One of the first known civilizations to establish vineyards and produce wine. Alcohol was vital to religious culture and was used as an offering to the gods. Greek literature, like Homer's Iliad and the Odyssey, describe alcohol being used for medicinal purposes and for celebrations. From ancient Greece, we jump over to ancient Rome. The Romans adopted wine production from the Greeks. To increase local demand, they placed restrictions on grapevine growth and wine production. During the first 2 centuries BC, the Romans began exporting wine, often using it as currency for slave labor. They also created standards for vineyards and bulk wine production. Now, we're headed to China. The Chinese were the first to distill spirits with yeast-fermented bases. Alcohol was considered sacred in China. People often drank during important rituals and celebrations. Ancient China also used alcohol as medicine, believing it could heal and prevent illnesses, slow aging, and maintain overall health. Before we look at alcohol in America, we'll make one final stop in Great Britain. By the year 1525, alcohol consumption had become part of every aspect of life in Great Britain, often resulting in the excessive use of distilled spirits. During this time, drunkenness was deemed a crime in England, and the British government began taxing distilled spirits. This marked the beginning of alcohol trade. At the beginning of the 18th century, Britain began using grain for distilling alcohol. Alcohol became cheap and alcohol consumption was widespread. Now, we go to the United States. When the English first colonized America, they did not drink water unless necessary. It was often dirty and led to illness. Beer, however, was used as an alternative to water. Quickly, early colonists began brewing their own beer from malted barley shipped from England. Aside from a substitute for water, alcohol was also used as payment for work. An attempt to ban this practice resulted in a widespread labor strike. Americans greatly enjoyed drinking, and by the end of the 17th century, they were consuming an average of 5.8 gallons of alcohol per person each year. During the American Civil War, alcohol played a significant role on the battlefield. It was used as medication for both sedation and pain management. Even though the U.S. military abolished a daily spirit ration for soldiers in 1832, officers during the Civil War were still permitted to issue special rations of whiskey to relieve fatigue and exposure. Throughout the war, excessive drinking was a continuous problem. While diligent officers could restrict the flow of whiskey into camp, soldiers could still drink when they received a pass to leave camp. Many soldiers acted irresponsibly and dangerously. Most court-martials were alcohol-related. Just like today, alcohol was also part of holiday celebrations, like the 4th of July and New Year's Eve. Our next section covers the history of alcohol legislation and regulation. In the 1820s and 30s, a wave of religious revivalism swept through the U.S., leading to temperance and alcohol abolitionist movements. The temperance movement promoted drinking in moderation and oftentimes abstinence from alcohol use. Due to the temperance movement, many states passed new laws. Some states banned the sale of spirits in large quantities, while other states banned the sale and use of alcohol entirely. Maine was the first state to pass temperance legislation. The Maine Law was passed in 1851. The Maine Law banned the sale of all alcoholic beverages except for medicinal, mechanical, or manufacturing purposes. Following the temperance movement, the 18th Amendment was written into the U.S. Constitution. The 18th Amendment banned the manufacture, transportation, and sale of alcohol. Soon after the 18th Amendment was signed, the Volstead Act was passed. The Volstead Act provided federal enforcement of prohibition. This means, by 1920, prohibition laws were in effect with legal enforcement. Prohibition resulted in a decline in drunken arrests and a 30% decrease in alcohol consumption. However, enforcement was difficult. People who wanted to drink soon figured out ways to do so. Bootlegging and speakeasies were two ways people got around prohibition law. Bootlegging is when alcohol is manufactured and sold illegally. Speakeasies were liquor stores and nightclubs that illegally sold alcohol and allowed for its consumption. These mechanisms for the production, sale, and consumption of alcohol led to an increase in drunken criminal activity. In 1933, Franklin D. Roosevelt was elected president. During his presidency, Congress decided to adopt the 21st Amendment, repealing the 18th Amendment, thus ending the national laws prohibiting the manufacturing, transportation, and sale of alcohol. Next, we will learn about the history of alcohol use prevention. For many years, research on alcohol focused on treatment. It wasn't until 1970 that interest in prevention emerged and strategies to prevent alcohol misuse were created. Click on each year to learn more about key events related to the history of alcohol use.
Listen to this news account from a hospital in Florida of a child born to a mother with a cocaine habit. Nearby, a baby named Paul lies motionless in an incubator, feeding tubes riddling his tiny body. He needs a respirator to breathe and a daily spinal tap to relieve fluid buildup on his brain. Only 1 month old, he's already suffered 2 strokes. Now you can see why drug abuse concerns every one of us, all the American family. Drugs steal away so much. They take and take until finally, every time a drug goes into a child, something else is forced out, like love and hope and trust and confidence. Drugs take away the dream from every child's heart and replace it with a nightmare.
Many of the programs and strategies mentioned were common prevention practices of the 20th century. As a result of research studies conducted in the last few decades, we now know what makes prevention practices effective and which prevention practices are not effective. Unfortunately, many of the prevention strategies that we know are ineffective and can potentially cause harm continue to be used in schools and communities across the country. Examples of these include zero tolerance and abstinence-only policies, motivational or cautionary speakers, and scare tactics such as mock car crashes. Programs and policies that are effective prevention strategies are initiatives that support peer-to-peer teaching, focus on healthy alternatives, use interactive approaches, and build skills in youth.
Is there anyone out there who still isn't clear about what doing drugs does? Okay, last time. This is your brain. This is drugs. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions?
In our next section, we will learn about alcohol consumption in the 21st century. According to the U.S. 2019 National Survey on Drug Use and Health, alcohol is one of the most used substances in the United States. The national survey found that 85.6% of adults 18 years of age and older reported drinking alcohol at least once in their lives. The survey also found that 69.4% reported having alcohol in the past year. Lastly, the survey found 54.9% reported having alcohol in the past month. The U.S. 2019 National Survey on Drug Use and Health also asked questions about how often people binge drink. Binge drinking is defined as consuming 5 or more drinks on an occasion for men, or 4 or more drinks on an occasion for women. The survey showed that 25.8% of all adults reported binge drinking in the past month. For men, 29.7% reported binge drinking in the past month. And for women, 22.2% reported binge drinking in the past month. Heavy drinking is defined as binge drinking on 5 or more days in 1 month. The survey showed that 6.3% of all adults reported they were heavy alcohol users in the past month. For men, 8.3% reported they were heavy alcohol users in the past month. For women, 4.5% reported they were heavy alcohol users in the past month. High-intensity drinking is defined as a pattern of drinking at levels that are 2 or more times the gender-specific binge drinking thresholds. People who engage in high-intensity drinking are 70% more likely to visit the ER for alcohol-related problems. The Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance System, or YRBS for short, is a survey conducted by the Centers for Disease Control. This survey collects data on youth behaviors that contribute to the mortality, disability, and social problems that affect adolescents. According to the 2019 YRBS, 29% of high school students reported drinking alcohol in the past month, while 14% of high school students reported binge drinking in the past month. 5% of high school students reported that in the past month they drove after drinking alcohol, and 17% of high school students reported that in the past month they had ridden in a car with a driver who had been drinking alcohol. In terms of alcohol use disorder, the 2019 National Survey on Drug Use and Health determined that 14.5 million people ages 12 and older had an alcohol use disorder, with an estimated 414,000 of these people being adolescents ages 12 through 17. Next, let's look into the ways the media and advertising can influence people to use alcohol. Researchers have found a link between exposure to alcohol advertising and alcohol consumption. This means the more advertisements youth see, the more likely they are to use alcohol. Common themes in alcohol advertising focus on partying, gender, sports, relaxation, and the quality of alcohol. Let's take a closer look at each of these common themes. Over the years, alcohol advertisers have increased the efforts to appeal to younger consumers. These efforts include advertisements with vibrant colors, fun names, trendy flavors, and unique flavor combinations. Product packaging and design target younger audiences. Examples of new alcohol marketing trends include skinny cans and alcoholic popsicles. The themes in alcohol advertising contribute to many misconceptions about alcohol consumption. Consumers are encouraged to believe false ideas such as, everyone drinks alcohol, alcohol is common and necessary to celebrate or have fun, and alcohol is a useful way to cope with stress. Alcohol advertisements can often misrepresent how a serving of alcohol is measured. A serving size of alcohol is measured in fluid ounces. A standard serving size is specific to the type of alcohol. A standard serving size of beer is 12 ounces at around 5% alcohol. A standard serving size of malt liquor is 8 to 9 ounces at around 7% alcohol. A standard serving size of wine is 5 ounces at around 12% alcohol. A standard serving size of liquor or distilled spirits is 1.5 ounces at around 40% alcohol. In this next segment, we will discover how alcohol affects the body. To understand how alcohol affects the body, we must look at the key ingredient, ethanol. Ethanol is the substance in alcohol which produces intoxication. When alcohol is consumed, it travels from the mouth, down the throat, and into the stomach. The stomach is where ingredients in alcohol begin to be absorbed by the body. Click on the stomach to learn more. How quickly the stomach absorbs alcohol depends on how recently a person has eaten, the concentration of the alcohol, and whether or not the alcoholic beverage is carbonated. If you have not eaten recently, or your stomach is empty, alcohol will be absorbed faster than if you had eaten recently and your stomach is full. The alcohol concentration, or the percentage of alcohol in a drink, also affects absorption. The higher the amount of alcohol concentration, the faster the absorption will be. For example, wine has an alcohol concentration of about 20%. Beer has an alcohol concentration of 3 to 8%. Your stomach will absorb the alcohol in wine faster than beer. On the other hand, liquor has an alcohol concentration of 40%, but it actually does not absorb faster than wine. This is simply due to the chemical makeup of liquor, which actually slows down absorption. However, Drinking liquor with carbonation, like soda, or consuming any type of alcohol with carbonation, like champagne and seltzers, will increase the speed of absorption. Once in the stomach, alcohol is absorbed directly into your bloodstream. As your blood circulates throughout your body, the heart, brain, and muscles are all exposed to the alcohol in your bloodstream. Click on the blood vessel to learn more. Blood alcohol concentration varies due to several factors. These factors include sex, size, body build, phase of menstrual cycle, and whether alcohol was consumed with other substances. For example, women typically have smaller blood volumes and have a harder time breaking down alcohol. Therefore, women can have higher blood alcohol concentrations than men, even if they consume the same amount of alcohol. Additionally, an individual with higher body mass may have more water in their body. This will result in the alcohol they consume to be more diluted in the blood. By this same logic, two people who weigh different amounts or are two different heights can drink the same amount of alcohol, but have very different blood alcohol contents after they drink. How much you have eaten and how much hydrating fluids you have consumed will also affect your blood alcohol concentration. So even if you have two individuals of the same sex with the same height, weight, and body mass, and they consume the same amount of alcohol, they could end up with blood alcohol concentrations very different from each other. Click on the brain to learn more. The central nervous system is made up of the brain and spinal cord. Alcohol mainly affects the central nervous system. Let's take a closer look. When alcohol is consumed, it affects the body and brain in many ways. Ethanol is the intoxicating ingredient in alcohol. When ethanol enters the body and binds with other neurotransmitters, the normal functions in your body start to slow down or have a depressant effect. Some examples of how alcohol affects the body include slurred speech, unsteady movement, altered perceptions, and slow reflexes. Alcohol can also cause impaired motor coordination, unsafe behavior, risk of injury, and poor decisions. One of the neurotransmitters that ethanol binds with is called dopamine. Dopamine induces feelings of relaxation, disinhibition, and euphoria. When a person first starts to drink, they may feel stimulated due to the body's dopamine release in the brain. Dopamine is also responsible for the reward center of the brain. Activation of the reward center is one of the addictive properties alcohol can have. Click on the heart to learn more. As a person continues to drink, you may notice some changes in their body. When a person drinks alcohol, it can cause them to sweat and become red in the face. Other physiological changes that may occur include an increased heart rate or blood pressure. These physiological changes are due to the body's fight or flight response. Click on the kidneys to learn more. When one consumes alcohol, increased urination is common. The kidneys secrete more urine when you drink for two reasons. One being because you consume an increased amount of fluid from alcoholic beverages. The second being because alcohol is a diuretic. Diuretics are substances that cause your kidneys to increase urine production. This is what causes you to become dehydrated after you have consumed alcohol. Click on the uterus to learn more. When a pregnant person drinks alcohol, the alcohol enters the blood. The blood then travels to the fetus through the placenta and umbilical cord. If alcohol reaches a fetus, it can cause miscarriages, stillbirths, fetal alcohol syndrome, or lifelong disabilities. Fetal alcohol syndrome is a condition in a child that results from alcohol exposure during a mother's pregnancy. Fetal alcohol syndrome can show up as abnormal facial features, small head size, low body weight, short stature, poor coordination, hyperactivity, memory problems and learning disabilities, and problems with heart, kidney, and bones. Click on the liver to learn more. The liver filters the blood and clears out any chemicals and toxins from the body, like drugs and alcohol. Chronic alcohol use can cause damage to the liver cells, which can result in permanent damage, such as liver failure. Different levels of alcohol consumption have different effects on the body. Let's look at the different stages of intoxication. The first stage of intoxication is known as the tipsy or euphoric stage. In this stage, the individual may feel more confident in themselves, may be more talkative, and may even feel a sense of euphoria. In this stage, inhibitions will begin to decline. The second stage, known as the excitement stage, an individual may feel nauseous or may even experience vomiting. In this stage, drowsiness, blurred vision, slurred speech, emotional instability, and a lack of judgment are all things a person may experience. The third stage of intoxication is confusion. Confusion is the first stage of alcohol intoxication, where an individual is highly likely to black out or lose their memory of events that occurred while drinking. In this stage, an individual may experience disorientation, impaired coordination, dizziness, and may not be able to stand. The fourth stage is stupor. Someone in this stage is extremely intoxicated and is at great risk for alcohol poisoning. In this stage, an individual most likely has lost most or all of their motor function. Individuals in this stage are likely unable to stand, walk, or voluntarily control any bodily functions. Individuals in this stage are most likely passed out. The fifth stage of intoxication is the coma stage. In this stage, an individual's respiratory rate and circulation have significantly lowered, their motor response and reflexes have decreased, and their temperature has dropped. The last stage of intoxication is death. This is when an individual is unable to sustain vital life functions. They may go into respiratory or cardiac arrest at this stage. The last topic we'll be discussing in the alcohol and the body segment is hangovers. Hangovers are unpleasant symptoms that occur after drinking. Examples include fatigue, headache, excessive thirst, sound and light sensitivity, nausea, and dizziness. There is a common misconception that hangovers are due to alcohol withdrawal. However, alcohol withdrawal does not occur until a person develops a dependence on alcohol. Alcohol withdrawal would not occur after one drunken night. The toxin in alcohol, acetaldehyde, is the actual cause of these hangover symptoms. Therefore, the more alcohol consumed means there is more acetaldehyde present in the body, which leads to more intense symptoms of a hangover. In this next section, we will be discussing how alcohol interacts with other drugs. Many prescriptions and over-the-counter medications have interactions with alcohol. These include drugs like antibiotics, cardiovascular medications, painkillers, depressants, or stimulants. As we discussed previously, acetaldehyde is a toxin in alcohol. This toxin is what causes the symptoms of a hangover that include fatigue, headaches, nausea, and dizziness. When antibiotics are taken with alcohol, the amount of acetaldehyde in the body increases. The buildup of acetaldehyde can make the symptoms of a hangover even worse. Cardiovascular drugs can also interact with alcohol and cause the side effects of these drugs to be much worse. Some of these side effects include low blood pressure and low blood sugar. Alcohol can also interact with the breakdown of these drugs and cause an increased risk of blood clots or bleeding. Painkillers can be dangerous when taken with alcohol as well. When medications like ibuprofen, Advil, or aspirin are taken with alcohol, there is an increased risk for developing an ulcer or gastrointestinal bleed. When Tylenol is taken with alcohol, there is an increased production of toxins, especially with chronic alcohol use. This can lead to injury of the liver. Opioids are especially dangerous to mix with alcohol, as they are also central nervous system depressants. The combination of alcohol and opioids can cause increased sedation, central nervous system depression, and even death. Anti-anxiety medication, antidepressant medications, and alcohol are all considered depressants. When antidepressant or anti-anxiety medications are used in combination with alcohol, there can be an amplification of their depressive effects. This can lead to dizziness, drowsiness, impaired judgment, and sedation. Some antidepressants mixed with alcohol can cause dangerously high blood pressure that could result in a medical emergency. Mixing alcohol with other depressants can also increase anxiety, depression, and mood swings, reversing the intended effects of the antidepressant and anti-anxiety medications. Drugs that stimulate the central nervous system are known as stimulants. Alcohol is a depressant, which is the opposite of a stimulant. Examples of stimulants include amphetamines, which are commonly used to treat ADD, are stimulants. MDMA, also known as ecstasy or Molly, and cocaine. These drugs cause an increase in heart rate, blood pressure, body temperature, energy levels, and alertness. When alcohol is combined with stimulants, it can cause dizziness, drowsiness, impaired concentration, seizures, heightened anxiety, and damage to the heart. Lastly, stimulants can conceal the effects of alcohol. As a result, people often gauge their level of intoxication inaccurately, which can cause overconsumption. Next, let's talk about the difference between alcohol use, alcohol abuse, and alcohol dependence. Let's start with alcohol use. Alcohol use has a pretty broad spectrum. On one end of the spectrum is someone who drinks socially, but does not get drunk, while on the other end of the spectrum is someone who constantly drinks above the recommended limit of alcoholic beverages. This end of the spectrum is when alcohol use becomes risky. Alcohol abuse is defined as a pattern of drinking that causes problems at home or work. However, the person does not experience cravings for alcohol or withdrawal symptoms. The person also has control over their drinking. Alcohol dependence is when someone has little to no control over their drinking habits. When someone has an alcohol dependence, they crave alcohol. This person also experiences negative physical symptoms when they stop using alcohol, known as withdrawal. What exactly is withdrawal? Withdrawal from alcohol can be put into 3 categories. The first category is early or minor withdrawal. The second is early severe withdrawal. The third category is late severe withdrawal. Now that we have defined alcohol use, abuse, and dependence, let's talk about alcohol use disorder. The DSM-5 defines alcohol use disorder as a person who experiences any 2 of the following 11 criteria. The 11 criteria are: 1. Consuming more alcohol than originally planned. 2. Worrying about stopping or consistently failed efforts to control use. 3. Spending a large amount of time using alcohol or doing whatever is needed to obtain it. 4. Use of alcohol results in failure to fulfill major role obligations, such as at home, work, or school. 5. Craving alcohol. 6. Continuing the use of alcohol despite health problems worsened by it. 7. Continuing the use of alcohol despite its having negative effects in relationships with others. 8. Repeated use of alcohol in a dangerous situation. 9. Giving up or reducing activities in a person's life because of alcohol use. 10. Building up a tolerance to the alcohol or other drug. 11. Experiencing withdrawal symptoms after stopping use. The greater the number of criteria that a person has, the higher the severity level of alcohol use disorder. Throughout this course, we have learned that alcohol use can be harmful when used excessively. However, current research shows there may be potential health benefits to alcohol use in moderation. For women, a moderate amount of alcohol would be considered 1 drink a day. For men, A moderate amount of alcohol would be considered 2 drinks a day. Studies have shown that moderate alcohol use can lower the risk of heart disease, reduce the risk of ischemic strokes, and reduce the risk of diabetes. However, no amount of alcohol use is risk-free. Even moderate alcohol use can cause a small, increased risk for certain cancers. Thank you for participating in this online course. Your certificate of attendance will be sent to the email address you provided. Please allow 3 to 5 business days to have this processed. Special thanks to our course writers, references, Global Insight Productions, Prevention First, the Ohio Coaching and Mentoring Network, and Ohio Mental Health and Addiction Services.